I recently published a book called My Apprenticeship, an Intellectual Journey. And my name is Karla Poewe, and I am an anthropologist. So this book is somewhat academic. Most of it, however, is the stories of an adventure. And it's a story about love and suffering, about the anthropologist uh, living and breathing um, among the people she's researching. So right now, I just want to read a little excerpt that has to do with um, the past that erupted unexpectedly. It was in Zambia for the first time that my World War II memories came back. And so I will read this to make you understand that there is a bias in the book. And it is something like this. While the intent of this book is to show how memories of my past emerged unexpectedly during certain events of my maiden field trip, this is the very first field trip that I took, and it was in 1972. There are some things that must be told now if the rest is to be understood later. As a child, I grew up in a devastated Germany. Our toys consisted of shrapnel and worthless money. Our best food of gritty black bread and potato soup. If you had young aunts and attractive ones, then this monotonous diet would be enriched occasionally with sweets and salted butter from, British and American soldiers. What we ate and the kind of social chaos we experienced depended on the sector of Germany in which a mother gave birth. Born into what became a Russian zone, I was haunted by all four of them: the Russian, the French, the British, and the American. But it was life in the Russian and British zones that left deep impressions. Our household was composed entirely of women, not because they were single, but because their spouses were at the front of World War II, taken prisoner of war, killed in action, or simply missing. Which of these wars remained unknown until many years later. To survive the breakdown of society, some of my aunts worked in factories, two continued as nurses, some were petty entrepreneurs trading and bartering anything in sight. My mother alternately worked in factories and bartered. Once she even bartered corsets. Don't ask me where she got them, but they were the favorite items, for she traded them to buxom farmers' wives for bread and occasionally even eggs or milk. My grandmother adored me in part, no doubt, because I hardly ever cried or spoke. For that very reason she considered me to be a rare child. Most of the time I was sick. One time, when I was left alone because my grandmother was out bartering, I was tortured by the pain and potential shame of diarrhea. There were no flush toilets nor outhouses. A few pails in the basement received human waste. Filled, they would be emptied onto dung hills and the waste used as night soil. This time all pails were full. Teary-eyed and in great agony, as you can imagine, I moved from pail to pail wherever there was a little room in an effort not to cause my grandmother extra work or embarrassment. Since I was just 6 years old, my grandmother considered this a great feat. She praised my good sense and marveled at the ticking of my tiny brain. All my aunts were told, and they too marveled. As reward, grandmother cooked a special potato soup with morsels of fatty meat. Before we ate, we raised our spirits by hitting our spoons on the table to the beat of our special song in German. Kartoffelsuppe, Kartoffelsuppe, jeden Tag Kartoffelsuppe. which means potato soup, everyday potato soup. And then we ate, feeling so happy that anything would have tasted good. In my household, decisions were made by women. To the child I was then, therefore, men were occasional guests, sometimes downright strange and mysterious because they did not even speak our language. Two men stood out from the few that were left. One was our math teacher, who always played the violin as he taught and who was infatuated with my mother. The other was Herr Deckwert, the village socialist and father of a handicapped child. It is because he had a handicapped child that he took a liking to me. In his room, which was painted totally pink to keep him, as he would say, awake, he taught me to speak about the world through poetry. Soon I won every poetry recital contest, and there were many. For Germans recited poetry at every festival, before every school play, at every inauguration, before every competition, at every demolition, before every reconstruction. My head was filled with Goethe and Schiller and Rilke and many others. Two things about these poems remained in my memory. They were mostly poems about personal freedom in the face of any kind of cultural oppression, and they were poems that lamented the alienation of the father from his child. I translate one of them. Who rides so late through the stormy night? It is the father with his child. He has the boy safe in his arm. He holds him secure, he holds him warm. The father shudders, his ride is wild. He holds in his arms the moaning child. He reaches the farmhouse with effort and dread. In his arms the child was dead.